its great fortress visited Europe from Greece, and of course Malta was no exception. It consists of the quarantine, in parts of the Mediterranean, and the first Lazzaretto, or isolation hospital, was established in the Menga in the Grand Harbour. A permanent one was built on Harbour Island in 1643 by Grand Master Lazzaretto. This hospital is known as the Lazzaretto of Saint John, and it is the building with the arches down to our right-hand side. Many distinguished visitors once toured Lazzaretto before they were permitted to visit Malta in the 19th century. Among these were his myriad, in 1839, Sir Walter Scott, a razor, and Lord Byron, in 1854. The quarantine laws were so severe that nevertheless, my Caravaggio was punished either by a 3-year term, by labor in the galleys, or sometimes even by death. It should be remembered that nearly 5,000 men, women, and children died in 1813 and 1815, during one of the first epidemics of the plague. It's worth knowing that during the last Great War, the Lazzaretto Hospital served as a submarine base. We are now entering into the 17th Lazzaretto Creek, which got its name from the isolation hospital. Here you can see the old yacht marina, which can accommodate 350 yachts.
Lazzaretto Hospital. Im Mittelalter suchten gefürchtete Epidemien Europa vom Osten heim. Malta war keine Ausnahme. Das Prinzip der Quarantäne entstand in diesem Fall in India. Das Isolationsstation wurde in Valletta Bay in Grand Harbour gegründet. Eine ständige Quarantänestation wurde 1642 vom Großmeister des Touristy auf Landing gegründet. Dieses Hospital ist als Lazarett von Rocco bekannt und ist das Gebäude mit den Böden auf der rechten Seite. Viele bedeutende Persönlichkeiten unterzogen sich im 19. Jahrhundert der Quarantäne, bevor ihnen erlaubt wurde, Malta zu besitzen. Unter ihnen war Lord Byron aus 712, 1836 Disraeli und ein Jahr später Sir Walter Scott. Wir kommen jetzt zum Zweigeschicht, die auch Lazarett genannt wird. Hier können Sie den alten Yachthafen sehen, der 350 Boote beherbergen kann.
Nice boats, Debbie.
Oh, they're beautiful. And they're so shiny. They're really shiny.
That's okay.
On to our right-hand side, you can see the town of Tashbish. Tashbish is the corruption of the Maltese word shpieg, meaning fishing nets. Fishermen used to stretch their fishing nets to dry along the shore. That is how the town got its name. Most of the foreign embassies can be found here. You can spot some of the different embassies from their flags. Up to about 20 years ago, the area of Tashbish was a very expensive area property-wise. In fact, some of the beautiful aristocratic houses you can see dates back to the 18th century.
Tashbish. Auf der rechten Seite ist die Stadt Tashbish, eine Anlehnung an das maltesische Wort Fisch, das Fischernetz bedeutet. Fischer spannten ihre Netze entlang des Ufer von Stacheln und so erhielt die Stadt ihren Namen. Heute sind hier die meisten ausländischen Botschaften zu finden. Wenn Sie an den flachen sehen können. Bis vor etwa 10 Jahren diese Gegend sehr teuer. Von Tatsächlich stehen einige der Häuser, die Sie dort sehen können, ab dem 18. Jahrhundert zurück.
When the British came to Malta, they found a great number of iron cannons on the island, which had been used in 1565 for the Knights of Saint John. Having no further use for them, they brought them down to our harbours and used as bollards to guide our ships through. There are about 300 of the bollards along the coast of this harbour and the Grand Harbour. You can see a few of them onto the right-hand side.
Kommt von dem maltesischen Wort Ensider. Das bedeutet so viel wie Fischerdorf. Cedar Creek wird bestimmt von der Pfarrkirche St. Joseph. Die Bucht wird auch als Yachthafen genutzt und kann bis zu 600 Boote aufnehmen.
cruising by the berthing place of Malta's battleships and aircraft carriers. Well, these are Malta's patrol boats run by the armed forces of Malta. Amongst other duties, they must ensure that no foreign fishing vessels enter Maltese territorial waters and attend to any kind of trouble out at sea. We are also cruising by Floriana, the suburb of Valletta, with a population of over 3,000. It was named after its designer, the military architect, Peter Paul Floriani. introduced to the place where the Italian knights trained to practice. In the 18th century, they were transformed as gardens for the public. Along the shore is the old customs house, that's the building with twin doors and windows. Attached to the upper Valletta gardens coming into view, you can see the other side of the river, which separates Valletta from southern Sliema.
Cospicua Garden. Intimate building of the logistic smaller time can be divided into 4 building groups. This is why it is rather than Valletta Garden. There are 2 vertical groups in the western
other harbors in Malta and in Europe are in this name. For instance, in Malta we have the Marsa Creek, the one we visited before. South side there is Marsa Creek and Marsa Scala. In Rhodes there is Marsa Corn. In Sicily there is Marsala, and in France there is Marseille. dry dock, which is 4 stories deep and can accommodate super tankers of up to 320,000 tons, meaning any ship passing the Suez Canal can deliver to you. Dock number 6 is also the biggest dry dock at Malta. fortification walls, you can see one of the three old cities, Senglea. You can also see the Church of the Nativity in Senglea, which was totally destroyed during the Second World War. It had been built in 1580. The present edifice is of post or vintage, having been built between 1946 and 1957. We are also cruising by docks 2 and 3, was inside dock number 2 that the HMS Jersey was first formed while it was in for repairs. As you can see, dock number 3 on our right hand side is now reserved for the super yachts and can be covered. surrounded by the three core cities. On the right is the city of Senglea, also known to the locals as Valletta. Coming to our left is the city of Lazzaretto, also known as Birgu, and into the creek in the middle is the third city of Cospicua, also known as Harbour. Later, the British turned it into a bakery for the Marines. Nowadays it houses the Maritime Museum.
Das Gebäude mit den blauen Türmen neben der Kirche wurde 1842 von William Scamper erbaut. Später veränderte es die Brücken in eine Bäckerei für die Marinesoldaten. Und jetzt ist es das Maritime Museum.
Proudly in command of the Grand Harbour, Port St. Angelo is perhaps the most famous port in Malta. Its history is as old as the history of the island. The site of a Phoenician and later a Roman temple, fortified by the Arabs, the Normans and the Spaniards, Port St. Angelo was the headquarters of the Order of Saint John from 1530 until 1576 and was the bedrock of the knightly defense in the Great Siege of 1565. The waste was garrisoned by the British Army for 100 years and by the Royal Navy since 1903. It was the headquarters of the British Mediterranean Fleet until 1978. After the year 1576, the port became the state prison of the order, and in 1581, Grand Master de la Casquier was kept as a prisoner there by the knights. Also, the famous artist Caravaggio was imprisoned here because he had offended one of the highest knights. Many of those who died in the Great Siege of 1565 are buried in the castle of St. Angelo. Nowadays, this port is rented to the Knights of Saint John for another 100 years. It was rented to them in February in the year 2000. Also, at the very top of the port, you can see a balcony. This is from where the Grand Masters used to salute the knights.
Der größte Feld des Landtages ist St. Angelo und bereits berühmteste Port auf Malta. Seine Geschichte ist gut aus wie die Geschichte der Insel. Erst ein Bau der Peninsula, später ein römischer Tempel, befestigt wurde aber direkt die Normannen und die Spanier. Das St. Angelo wird hauptsächlich als Schloss von 1530 bis 1540 und der Grundstein für die Verteidigung Gegenstände des öffentlichen Lagers im 1564. Viele von denen, die während des öffentlichen starben, sind hier beerdigt. Wenn Sie auf die Spitze schauen, sehen Sie die Altlatten. Einige Nationalstaaten und andere sind gebracht worden. 1999 wurde das Kreuz für weitere 99 Jahre an die Ritter vermietet. Auf der äußeren Spitze des Kreuzes können Sie ein Balkon sehen. Von hier aus ist der Großmarktplatz super begrüßt.
Together with the hospital, they built a stone lift which used to carry up wounded sailors coming here by boat directly into the hospital. This was also the first electric lift in Malta. The stone huts you can see along the shore were used as changing rooms by the nurses who worked into the hospital. In their break time, they used to come and swim here in Big Bay. In fact, if you look all around the stone huts, you can see passageways which leads to the sea. Nowadays, the hospital is converted into a restoration center. The Bay was the birthing place of such famous warships, such as HMS Corfu, Repulse, Rodney, and Nelson. Coming to our right-hand side, you can see Fort Ricasoli, which commands a strategic position at the entrance of the Grand Harbour. The site had been used effectively by the Turks against Fort St. Elmo during the Great Siege, and to prevent a repetition work on a fort then known as Torre San Petronio, started in 1629. The present fort dates back to the year 1670 and was built at the expense of a knight, Francesco Ricasoli, after whom is his name. We are also cruising by the tank cleaning yard, where tankers are obliged to stop before entering the dry docks. They must ensure that they are gas-free.